Hi everyone, welcome to Scolio-Pilates Strong, episode 9. I am so glad you're here and able to join us today. It's nice and sunny, so we have a lot of nice light coming in today. So here we are, and we always start with a scoliosis tidbit, and today is functional versus structural scoliosis. And functional versus structural is important to know because it's going to dictate how you manage either your scoliosis or the scoliosis of someone that you're working with, if it's a patient or a client. Functional scoliosis, let me grab my spine here. Functional scoliosis is a scoliosis that won't necessarily it won't maintain the shape. It will change. So it will look like this in one position, and then if you change position, it could look exactly the opposite. It might go over here, and the bottom might compensate in the other direction, or you might see a top curve and the bottom curve disappears depending on what you're doing. So functional scoliosis is generally used to indicate that the scoliosis is not set in the bones. It is not, in other words, it's malleable. I mean, if I take someone off the street today and say, can you stand like this? And yeah, they can totally stand like that. But if I lie them on their backs, or I sit them down, or I do something else, then their back it returns to what they already know, or what their spine already does. So we do see functional scoliosis as a result of some other condition generally. The most common would be a leg length discrepancy. So if you have one leg that's longer than the other, which, okay, we all have that. So don't get too excited if you have one leg that's half a centimeter longer than the other. It's all very normal. However, if you had a significant leg length discrepancy, so say more than like 1.5 centimeters, more than 2 centimeters, that's probably going to give you a pretty good functional scoliosis. You're probably going to find yourself, compensating to that leg on every single step. So what do we do about functional scoliosis versus structural? Functional scoliosis, as long as it's not become structural, we'll talk about that in a second, should be treated like any other spine. That spine should be side bending in both directions. That spine should be rotating. That spine should be doing spine extension and ranges of motion, all of it. And really focusing on getting the musculature to work evenly on both sides. So we have the muscles on the right side working, then we have the muscles on the left side working. Whereas if it becomes structural, which is what Scolio-Pilates is about. Scolio-Pilates is about working with structural scoliosis. I'm more than happy to work with functional. However, it's just really easy. It's just exercise. Do the right side, do the left side. If you think the right side's weak, do the right side again. But that's not Scolio-Pilates. So Scolio-Pilates is about working with the spine. I'll make my spine here. Scolio-Pilates is about working with the spine that is a structural scoliosis. So the bones have changed. And when the bones have changed, now working the right side, working the left side, then working the right side again is not the answer. That is not going to help you change the shape of a bone. Scolio-Pilates isn't necessarily going to change the shape of a bone either. However, it is a much more complex group of exercises to create an improved alignment. And now we're looking at 3-dimensional corrections as opposed to just elongate, or just give me your best alignment and then move. So with structural, the shape of the bone does change. And you can see this from a very, very young age with someone with scoliosis, not necessarily something that comes with age. Structural can happen very young, depending on how the vertebrae are forming. Functional can also start very young. It can start at any age if you have an injury, and then it can become structural if you leave the problem that's causing the functional scoliosis to go on for too long. Okay. That's functional versus structural. So when we're working together, we're always working on functional scoliosis. We're always working on structural scoliosis. We're working on those changes. All right, so today's episode, and I just wanted to remind you that you are more than welcome to chime in at any time. There's a chat button at the top bar there in the middle of the screen, probably right above my head. It's a little different, your screen than mine. And you can chat at any time. I most likely won't see those questions until I'm done here with the exercises and things. But if you're afraid you're going to forget the question, go ahead and throw it in there as it's happening. If I can, I'll get to it while we're moving here. Otherwise, I'll wait till after. All right, let me get rid of this guy and put him in a safe place. I'm over here. And then from here, we are going to be using a lot of wedges today. If you have the wedges, fantastic. If you don't have the wedges, then I'll give you some alternatives, some things to think about that you might be able to use at home. So as I grab them, I will tell you what they are. That's an ant. and then, you know, again, if you have them, you can grab them at home. If not, we'll give you some cues for some variations here. All right, so when we're talking about prone exercises, I'm always, for scoliosis, going to be using the K2. Yes, we created it. But, you know, honestly, for years and years, we were piling up foam rollers and yoga mats. You'll see in my book, both the first and second edition, that a lot of the prone work is done up on a rolled up yoga mat. That works. So whatever you can find and use is great. We created this because when we use the yoga mat or we put the foam roller under our hips, then there's a tendency for the spine to go into a hyperextension. And we didn't really like that very much. Okay, so before I go prone, because it's going to be harder for me to talk to you when I get there, let me take my spine and put it here, and then we'll look at it this way. So I'll lift it up a little higher so you can see. Get this guy. So when we're looking at scoliosis, there we go. Stay. All right, when we're looking at scoliosis in prone, it's going to be the same as what we talked about last week in supine. So we have the convexities, and those convexities are the parts of our spine that if you're lying on the floor, those parts, you can really feel those parts on the floor. So for me, it's this spot right here, this thoracic, the upper thoracic. If I turn myself upside down here, it's the part where the ribs would touch the floor first on the right side, and honestly, my left ribs don't even touch the floor. And then the left side of the lumbar spine, this side of my back touches the floor, and this side does not. So the convexities are the parts that are convex, the parts that are sticking out. It would be the same if I backed myself up against this wall here. So if I slid my wall, if I slid my back against the wall, then my right upper back is going to touch the wall, and my left lower back is not going to touch the wall. So instead of getting into a discussion about three curve, or the types of curves, which would be like 3, 4 thoracolumbar curve, what we can just narrow this down to is we can talk about where are the convexities. So we have convex, we have convex, and then the other sides are the hollows or the concavities. At the beach, we call these tide pools and sand dunes, and tide pool up here in the thoracic. So if I was holding this up this way, it would be sand dune, tide pool, and it would be sand dune, tide pool. When I put my spine, meaning me, like if this were me lying down here, on the wedge, back this up a little bit more, then the convexities are, everything gets elongated. That's why we created this wedge shape. It's an elongation, it's a stretching, it's a reaching of the spine towards a more neutral alignment. When we're in this position, if it's a structural scoliosis, you're still going to see sand dune tide pool or convex concave in the thoracic, and you will still see the same in the lumbar. So what do you do about that? Well, ideally, since we're movement practitioners, whether you're doing this for yourself or whether you're doing this to help someone else, you're going to try to get an improved alignment before you actually create exercise. So we would never have someone come in and their head is here and turn and say, okay, so now what I want you to do is lie on your back and I want you to do a sit-up from that position. So we would never do that. And so we're not going to do that here either. We're going to assist the spine towards a more neutral position before we create movement and exercise. So if we're going to create a wedged position to assist this spine, then we're going to lift the concavities or let the concavities sink. So this is a question for me to you to think about. Or if you have a place that's hollow here in the lumbar spine, and you have a place that's lifted and high on the other side of the lumbar spine, are you going to continue to let the hollow drop, or are you going to lift it up? Of course, you're going to lift it up. So if I had a wedge, which I do, if I had a towel, which I do somewhere else in the house, but this is handy, I'm going to pop that wedge underneath the hollow and lift it up. Now notice that in prone, we're going to put the fat end in, so here's the shape of the wedge. The fat end goes in towards the spine. So it comes down and then it goes in this way. Because if we put the small edge in first, then it's just going to do what the spine is already doing, which is push it over to the left. It's already over there. So we don't want to encourage that. Fat end goes in first or towards the spine when you're in prone. Now, what about in the thoracic spine? You have convex, you have concave, right? Convex, concave. And if this side is hollow, are you going to lift that side or push it down? Of course, you're going to lift it up. And are you going to put fat end in first, or are you going to put small end in first? It's prone, so we're going to go fat end in first. So the fat end goes in, because remember, if we put the small end in first here, and the wedge is shaped like a wedge, then it's just going to make the spine go even more into the direction it wants to go. All right, so let's review this again, but I'll use my body so you can see what's going on. So I'll move this out in front of me. I'm going to use the pelvic wedge underneath my abdomen to get started with this. It's going to do two things. It's going to keep the blood rushing from my head too quickly, since I'm also trying to chat with you. And it's going to create less elongation for me. Less elongation is not necessarily something that I need today, but it might be something that one of your clients or patients needs. So you might not want to necessarily take the wedge away from them and have them in that much elongation to start. You might want to start a little more conservatively. In fact, I would recommend that. And just put a little wedge here. So they have some, as you can see, my head is lower than my hips, but I'm not in as much elongation as I could be. All right, so now let's think about this. Let me grab my spine. Here we are. Can you see it? So this is going to be the hardest one to do because I'm going to be upside down for the rest of class. All right, so the right side of the thoracic is convex and the left side is concave. So the wedge is going to go fat end in underneath my left side of my chest. So I have the fat end of the wedge in, and it's going to go here. And then let me grab my other wedge. Sorry to put my back to you. All right, so fat end in, and that's pretty much right underneath my ribs on my left side. And then my lumbar spine, fat end in, underneath the concavity, and that goes here. Now, there's a bit of information that I already know about my hips. It's a lot of information I know about my hips. However, one bit of information is that I know that my right side of my hip lives more anterior than my left. So my right hip is always trying to go forward. So I'm going to pop this underneath my right hip as well. Now my hands, I'm not going to put my hands flat on the floor here. I'm going to stack them, one fist over the other. So I have two fists, and I'm going to rest my head on my fists so that my head doesn't drop down. So if I imagine my spinal cord as a hose with fluid running through it, which there is fluid running through it, then you don't want to put a kink in the hose by having this nice long line from your hips to the top of your neck, and then boom, putting a kink in the hose. All right, so let's talk about this from seated, what we just did, so you can see. So here we are. This is me. You're looking at my spine from the front here. So let me just put my hips down here by my hips. That will be easier. Make the curve a little more exaggerated. That will also make life a little easier. All right, so now let's start at the bottom. We know that my right hip likes to live forward. So we're going to bring it back. And if we're on our stomachs, the easiest way to do that is to put this wedge, the scolio rectangle, underneath that right hip and push it back. Okay, so we have that. Now, we also know that in prone, or in any position actually, that this is my concave side of my lumbar. We're going to go fat end of the wedge in. We're going to turn it this way so that the spine doesn't roll toward, or doesn't slide towards the left. So we have these two wedges so far. Scolio rectangle underneath the right hip, and scolio wedge, fat end in towards the spine. And I'm running out of hands here, so we'll just double that one up. And then we're going to come up here, and this wedge is also going to go fat end in underneath the thoracic. Okay, so we have those three bits of wedging. Now, once we're there, we are going to strengthen. So there's many ways to strengthen, and you can just do the easiest, most basic, which is breathe. You can start with breathing. I'm not sure that's going to work there. Okay, we'll try it. So from here, let me get my wedge back out, and let me get my wedges in shape again. I have a feeling I'm going to run into that. So I'm going to just put them down before I lie down. So that goes under my right hip, fat end in, that goes underneath my right lumbar, this goes underneath my left thoracic, and I don't think I'll use that. We'll see how I do without it. And then we're going to go down. Of course, that's not going to work. So we'll go here, and then we'll go here. Now, from this position, my hands are now flat on the floor. I have my head resting on two flat hands, one hand over the other here. From here, I'm going to straighten both legs, just like we did last week when we were lying on our backs and we did Wonder Woman legs. I'm going to do Wonder Woman legs here also. I'm going to push through my heels, and I'm going to push through the heel on the side of my lumbar concavity a little bit more. So that's my right leg, because my lumbar concavity is on my right side, as you can see in the skeleton model right in front of my head here. So I'm going to push through the right heel, and then I'm going to inhale, and I'm going to exhale all the air. And then I'm going to inhale, and then I'm going to exhale all the air. I'm going to do 3 more like that, pushing through both heels, but then pushing through my right heel a little bit more, inhaling. Exhale all the air. Twice more, inhaling. Exhale all the air. Last time, inhale. Exhale all the air. Okay, I'm starting to stand on my elbows a little bit, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to talk to you.
But that is actually a natural tendency for most of our clients here. So I want you to, when you're doing this, practice lifting the elbows and moving them further away. Lift the elbows and move them further away. And then drop your head down onto your hands. Then from there, keep reaching through the heels. Keep pushing through the heel on the side of the lumbar concavity or the lumbar hollow. And now you're going to lift the head up and down. It's going to look like this. You drop the head on the hands. You lift the head up just about 2 centimeters. And you drop the head back down. The head comes up 2 centimeters. The head goes down. You come up and you come down. Let's do 3 more. You come up and you come down. Twice more. And down. Okay, let's add on to this. So let's start by giving the ankles a bit of a break. We're going to bring the heels together. And then from here, we are going to push the heels. So the heels come together, but they also push together. From here, squeeze the butt muscles. They'll already probably be squeezing a little bit because you're pushing your heels together. And then imagine there's a giant ball high, high, high between your legs, as high as it can fit between your legs. Squeeze that ball. This is basically a pelvic floor contraction. It is a pelvic floor contraction. And then imagine that 2-year-old in the room. Remember the 2-year-old that we talk about frequently? That 2-year-old is back in the room. That 2-year-old is going to punch you in the stomach. So you have to be sure that you're bracing for that punch. So my heels are pressing, my butt muscles are squeezing, and I'm squeezing the ball high between my legs, and I'm ready for that 2-year-old punch. Now from here, your head is down, inhale. Exhale, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old, and now lift the head 2 centimeters. Lift the elbows and reach them away, and you come down. Inhale. Exhale, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old. Lift your head 2 centimeters. Reach the elbows away, and everything comes down. Again, inhale. Exhale, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old. Now lift the head 2 centimeters. Before you come down, lift the elbows, reach them away, and your head goes down. Again, inhale. Exhale, butt, ball, 2-year-old. Lift the elbows, reach them away. Last time, inhale. Exhale, butt, ball, 2-year-old. Lift the elbows, reach them away, and your head goes down on top of your hands. Okay, that was excellent. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to make sure that you are not, that you're never resting on your elbows, that you're always trying to lift the elbows and reach away, and lift the elbows and reach away. And what you're going to find is that it's a constant lengthening. So I feel like every time I do this, every time I lift the elbows, I've reached a little further. I lift the elbows and I've reached a little further, and again and again and again. And it's constantly moving me out and longer. So every time I do this, my spine feels like it's getting a little longer. Okay, so from here, from here, I am going to show you one more exercise, prone. That doesn't use any other accoutrement, but we'll just be using our bodies. Now, if you don't have any of this at home, you can probably find stuff that will work for you, right? It's a little wedge shape. I'm sure you have stuff in the house if you don't have these. All right, so last time, we're going to go back over, one more wedge. I wanted to show you a shoulder girdle correction. So if you have a curve just like mine, which looks just like this, left lumbar and right thoracic. Then we talked about the wedging already. We talked about this going underneath the right hip, a small wedge going underneath the left lumbar, and we talked about the small wedge underneath the, or did I say left lumbar? I meant right lumbar, and a small wedge underneath the left thoracic.
What we didn't talk about yet was the shoulder girdle. So the shoulder girdle correction is generally on the side of the thoracic convexity or the sand dune. So my right side, that shoulder tends to like to roll forward. If you have any question about what shoulder likes to roll forward, just lie on your back and then turn your head left and turn your head right, and you'll see which shoulder is further forward. If you still don't know, ask someone else to tell you. If you're a therapist or a Pilates instructor helping someone else, you can get down to eye level with their shoulders and you can see which side has more space underneath of it. The shoulder with more space underneath of it is the internally rotated shoulder, again, generally on the side of the thoracic convexity. All right, so usually when we get into, we start exercising, this internal rotation ends up, if my hands are on my head, ends up looking like this. So you see that my ear and my one shoulder are super close to each other and the other one is further away. So it ends up looking very tight and congested here. The way we manage that is we take a large wedge, so a large scolio wedge here, and then we pop it underneath the shoulder. I usually like to go fat end in. It's on a diagonal. It's directly under the shoulder joint itself. And I usually go on a diagonal with the fat end going towards my ear. It just keeps it from sliding around. You could do it the other way. It just keeps it from sliding. So let's do the wedging again. And then let's do another exercise or two there. So these are all spine strengthening, whether it's a leg moving, whether it's my head moving or an arm moving. All of these exercises excite the muscles and the neurons of the spine so we can strengthen there. So I know that's going to go there. You know what? Why don't I turn around so you can see this from the other direction as well. So we know this little rectangle is going to go underneath my right hip because my right hip loves to live forward no matter what position you put me in. Okay, so that goes there and that goes there, fat end in, and then I'll put the others in place as I get over there. So on my tummy, knees apart, wedge underneath my left or right lumbar, wedge fat end in underneath my right thoracic, fat wedge goes underneath my right shoulder with the fat end in towards my ear. That probably would have been helpful to see from the other side. I'll switch it again. You'll see. Okay, so now I'm resting on my head. I'm resting my head on my hands. I lift my elbows. I reach them away. So we've already done Wonder Woman stance. I'm going to bring my legs a little closer together. Oops, that will just move this way. Get away from that box a little bit. So I have Wonder Woman stance. I'm going to lift my right leg up and bring it down. That's going to be the exercise, but let me chat you through what we're going to do before we move. So your head is reaching long and away. My heels are reaching long and away. I push harder through my right leg. I squeeze the butt. I squeeze the ball. 2-year-old punch. Really reach my head in the opposite direction to stabilize, and then my right leg comes up. If I don't reach my head away after I've reached my leg away, I'm most likely going to go into hyperextension of my low back when I start to lift my legs. So you have to have a two-way push-pull. So again, it looks like this. My legs are in Wonder Woman stance. I push through both heels. I push through my right heel even more. I push through the top of my head. My arms are pushing down into the floor, and I pull back on them a little bit isometrically so that I can get more length in my head. And then the leg goes up, leg goes down. Squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old, reach the head away, pull the elbows back, and then up and down. Butt, ball, 2-year-old, head goes away, arms pull towards the wedge, and you go up and you go down. Inhaling, exhaling, butt, ball, 2-year-old, push the right heel,
up through the top of the head, pull the arms out, back, now lift the leg up and down. Again, butt, ball, 2-year-old, reach the head away, pull the arms back towards you, reach the leg up and down. Last time, inhaling, exhaling, butt, ball, 2-year-old, reach the right leg up, reach the head away, pull the elbows back towards you and right back down. Good, good, good. So you're never going to, I'll flip this again so you can see the other side. You're never going to lift a leg or lift the head until everything has been stabilized. You want as much stability in the system as possible before you start lifting. Because otherwise, my body with scoliosis is going to do what my body does best, which is go right back to its curve. So in other words, if I'm here I am seated, and if I do all of my elongation and I have my right hip back and my right leg is pushing and I have the butt squeeze, the ball squeeze, the 2-year-old, and I'm reaching my head and I'm pulling back with my elbows to help me elongate, then I can lift my leg and everything stays stable. But if the legs aren't pulling caudally while my head is pulling cranially, then I'm going to collapse in the middle the moment my leg lifts. You really need a two-way push-pull before you start moving. Think of Dr. Doolittle's push me, pull you, and that's what you want before you ever lift. Okay, so this is my wedge. It's going to go underneath my right shoulder. This goes underneath my right lumbar. This goes underneath my left thoracic, but not while I'm here. So now, this will be easier. So here, and then here. Okay, so my legs are together. Now I'm going to do upper body. So squeeze the heels, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old. My right hip pushes towards my right heel. My head pushes away. And then from this position, I'm going to reach my right arm. The wedge falls out, that's fine. And I pull it back in. I reach my left arm and I pull it back in. So I'm staying elongated. When my hands are here, when they're right here in front of me, my hands are pushing down and pulling, they're pulling towards the wedge so that my head can reach away. It's isometric, and I know you don't see any movement happening there, but that's the direction of the motion, okay? Arms are down, pulling towards the wedge, head is reaching away. Again, from here, heels together, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old, push the arms down, pull them in, head goes away. Hold this, inhale, exhale, reach the arm, and bring it back. Now the arm is active again and pulling towards the wedge. Reach the arm and pull it back. Now the arm is active again and pulling towards the wedge. I'm starting to lose my abdominals here. I'm starting to go into some hyperextension. So I have to really remember the 2-year-old. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and squeeze the heels together, squeeze the butt, the ball, the 2-year-old, push the arms down, pull them back, reach the head. Now hold all that. The arm reaches and comes back. The arm reaches and comes back. Reach and back. Reach and back. 2-year-old punch. Don't forget that so you don't get into hyperextension. Reach and come back. Reach and come back. Reach. One more each side. Reach and come back. Reach and come back. You can challenge this by taking both arms out. So you're here and then both arms go out and both arms come in. You have to really, really, really hold on to those stomach muscles when you do that, or you're going to end up in hyperextension. The other thing you really have to think about, or you might want to think about when you first start doing that, is that when the arms go out, I'm still pushing into the floor for support, and I'm pushing into the floor for support on the way back. Otherwise, I'm going straight into an extension of my spine. And I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to maintain a neutral alignment. So from here, you're doing both arms, squeeze hard when you squeeze the heels together. Squeeze hard for the butt, the ball. Squeeze super hard for the 2-year-old punch. Arms down, head reaches super, super tight with the stomach. Reach the arms out, reach the arms back. Reach the arms out, reach the arms back. Twice more. Out. I'm using the floor for support. Out and back in. Alrighty. So that is all a lot of spine strengthening. So even though the arms and the leg, because I don't think we ever did the left leg, were the ones that were moving, remember that it's all for spine strength. Trying to get into this prone position so that we can engage those muscles that way. All right, so thank you very much. This has been Scolio-Pilates Strong, episode 9, and I am so grateful that you were here and that you were able to join me. And of course, let me know if you have any questions.